Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program. It's Friday night. We're live. We're national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Thrilled and blessed, honored to be here with you. Hoping to chop it up with you guys in a little bit when we do open phones across America. But I want to start out with a couple of things. A couple of days ago, I was at lunch with a couple of my boys, my gym buddies, and they were like, hey, did you hear the case about the guy who got robbed for his crypto? And I was like, I hadn't heard about it. And then my other friend says, really? Because there's like two of those cases going on. I was like, really? I didn't hear about either one. He's like, yeah, they got this dude. They were torturing him. They were beating him up, all this different stuff. And in order to get his crypto. And I said, man, that's crazy. But apparently that's what was going on. And it made me think, there's a whole lot of emphasis on crypto. And I think it's because people are able to do so much, right? Once you can transfer that money. And we've seen people kidnap people for ransom before, but it just seems like as Bitcoin goes up, more and more people want a piece of that pie. But this one happened in New York City, and now there's a new twist in this, saying that some NYPD detectives may be involved, and the detective involved may be part of Mayor Adams' security detail. Check this out.
Tonight, two members of the New York Police Department have been placed on modified duty, guns and badges temporarily taken, according to the NYPD, as they're investigated for any link to two crypto businessmen, John Waltz and William Duplessis, accused of kidnapping an Italian investor before his escape 17 days later and torturing him inside of his Soho townhouse, trying to pry away his Bitcoin password. Law enforcement sources familiar with the case say that includes a detective in Mayor Adams' security detail who was working off-duty at the time and provided security at that townhouse. The NYPD telling NBC News members of the service were modified yesterday. The matter is under internal review.
How did this possible connection come to light?
Ever since this incident took place, detectives are scouring everything that happened. At some point, the detectives identified a couple of members of the NYPD that may have had interactions with the Italian tourist. And at that point, the investigation widens.
Terry Monahan is a former NYPD chief of department. Sources say that detective picked up the Italian tourist at the airport, but where they traveled next and whether either member had any knowledge of what was allegedly happening in that townhouse is under review.
Did they know anything that was going on? Were they involved in the criminality? This is all going to come out over the next couple of weeks as the investigation continues.
Monahan says any sort of off-duty security job has to be pre-approved. Whether this one was is also part of the investigation. Mayor Adams not addressing the matter during a public appearance today, but a spokesperson told NBC News every city employee is expected to follow the law, including our officers, both on and off duty. We are disturbed by these allegations. Attorneys for both men accused of kidnapping and torture have declined to comment. Sam Brock, NBC News, New York.
So this video has been circulating around the web. The guy is like half naked, then he puts on like some black clothes that he finds. He's very disheveled. He's barefoot. He's running around. He finds a traffic cop in the city. And again, this happened about 7 days ago today. His name, he's 28 years old. He's an Italian cryptocurrency millionaire, Michael Valentino Teofrastro Carturan. And his claim at the time was that he escaped this situation when he was being tortured for, a number of days. And as the report noted, you got these two suspects, John Waltz and William Duplessis. And this is, it's not crazy, although it is, right? It's crazy. that it's happening in Soho and in this really fancy townhouse. That's not the crazy part. The crazy part is that he survived all the torture and did not give up his crypto password. Looked like he was willing to die with his crypto password. Good for him. Good for him, I guess, right? You know, I mean, some people would like to give it up, the password to the crypto wallet. I don't know. I salute his fortitude. But what's crazy to me is this involvement with the cop, right? The cop that may be connected to the mayor's detail. Now, I'm not trying to implicate the mayor. The guilt by association is already implied. The issue here is, what the cop know? Did he think he was just doing an off-duty gig? Or, you know, was there more to this? You know, that was the most recent allegation, right? That the former police commissioner of New York City, Caban, had to step down because of all the investigations going on there, saying that they were doing this, that, and the third. So it's not a good look for Mayor Adams, not a good look for this guy, you know, and a really good look, though, for the NYPD, for rescuing this guy, for arresting the guys that did it, for, you know, taking action against the officers that are, you know, alleged while they investigate, putting them on modified duty. So just very interesting, the whole story. And I wanted to bring it to your attention because this is just a very unique case, right? And I don't know. I found it very unique in that you don't see this type of thing every day, right? Not every day you see a crypto kidnapping. And it's not every day that you see a crypto anything, right? I think crypto is becoming more popular. And it's a topic I like to talk about because I believe that as we progress, right, everything will eventually catch up to other parts of the world, right? We're not the early adopter in the United States for some things. And I'll use an example. I remember 1999, 2000, 2001, 2003. In 2001, I worked for Verizon Wireless. And I remember I would meet colleagues from all over the place, you know, people that worked in the retail part of the company, people that worked in other parts of the company. Because if you recall, Bell Atlantic Mobile, which was like New York Telephone a million years ago, merged with Vodafone, a European cell phone company, to create Verizon. And when that happened, there was a lot of upgrading from analog to digital to, I think it was called 1X RTT, right, at the time. And they went all the way up. Now we're up to 5G. Anyway, long story short here, the move was to beat Europe. That was always the move. And I remember I would meet people, and they, you know, the Vodafone people, and they would tell me, oh, yeah, conferences and things like that. They would all say the same thing. They were like, wow, you guys use so much the voice function on your phones. And I said, what do you mean? And they would say, you talk to people. Like you use your phone to make phone calls. And I said, well, isn't that what phones are for? And they were like, you know, honestly, most people in Europe just use it for the texting, or they called SMS, for the SMS function. And back then, texting wasn't like it is today. Back then, to get, you know, to change the letters, you had to press the same number, the same digit on the phone like 3 times to get the number to change. And I thought, wow, that's so bizarre. Why would anybody want to do that? Plus, at the time, there were these SkyTel pagers, if anybody remembers that. But, you know, it's like a little QWERTY keyboard on a beeper, right, on a pager, where you could send text messages. So the thinking was, if you need to send messages, you could use your SkyTel, you know, your pager. And then came this the advent of the BlackBerry. And I was like, wow, you can look at your email and do text messaging and emails with the little track wheel on the phone all in one. You know, and that was, you know, some years later. But again, this was a fascinating concept that 10 years earlier, people were telling me people don't even look at traffic lights in most parts of Europe because they're busy texting. Nobody talks. Everybody's texting, texting, and texting. And here we are today, right? And that was 2001, 2002, whatever. Here we are in 2025. So more than 20 years ago. And voila, we're in the same place. I don't use my phone to talk to very many people. I do, you know, some texting. I do take a few calls, but it's almost guaranteed when my phone rings now, it's either some sort of political donation request or one of those weird, robocalls for a number of things, like Social Security that they've been trying to sell me. Bottom line, I bring that up to say, crypto, all over Europe, you have the option to pay with crypto on a number of things. When you go to the ATM, you can access your Coinbase account on some ATMs. And even like Colombia, when I was in Colombia, you could use crypto for a lot of things. And that's still very taboo to a lot of people in the United States. Yet this administration is moving at lightning speed towards making crypto normal every day, right? A part of everyday life. So I say that to say, I think we're reliving that moment where people told me in Europe, nobody's looking at the streetlights and people are just walking around texting each other. I think we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to have ATMs where you can access crypto. Crypto is going to be the future of how we spend our money, whether we like it or not, right? I know there's a lot of resistance to that, but I don't think there's going to be paper currency for a whole long time. I really don't, not much longer, because I think the extinction of the penny, which we recently saw from President Trump, his recommendation to do that, is the beginning of eliminating costs related to currency. And again, I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying I like cash. I like the idea of sleeping on your money. I do. But guess what? I don't think it's going to last. So that's all I'm saying. And maybe a little bit later, you guys can give me your thoughts on that. I also want to get into a few other things tonight. We got a few things on the agenda here. I'm going to talk about a little civil rights, the Department of Education, how schools are not living up to the expectation when it comes to the First Amendment. I want to talk about a really interesting take on a movie I saw that a guest also saw and wants to talk about how you can use Hollywood sometimes to analyze current events. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, I want to talk about the attack on Christians, right? There was an attack on Christians in on the West Coast in Seattle and whatnot. And man, let me tell you, this was distasteful to say the least. And yesterday, I got tagged on a tweet from the director of President Trump's Office of, I think it's called Faith-Based Affairs. Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. The White House Office of Faith-Based Affairs, Jenny Korn. And she was tweeting out an article by Jason Rantz from KTTH in Seattle. Shout out to KTTH. So I want to sit down and have a little chat with Jason Rantz about the article he wrote and about what happened as the left went and did what they do to, loot and riot and do what they do. And I'm being exaggerated there. But yet they blamed a bunch of Christians that were assembled relatively peacefully. So we're going to get to that and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The prayer rally in Seattle's Cowell Park Saturday quickly turned violent when members from the LGBTQ community and Antifa showed up to protest.
One of them actually pulled a knife and threatened a 17-year-old on our side. And not to mention, while the kids were getting haircuts, there was actually sexually, explicit lewd acts being done directly in front of the children.
The rally was held in an area with a well-known gay neighborhood at the direction of the city. Ross Johnston, co-leader of the Mayday USA prayer event, tells CBN News they knew there would be protests, but he never expected such violence.
Multiple police officers were assaulted. There was water balloons with urine being thrown. There's 2 people who rushed the stage.
The FBI is looking into charges of attacks on religious believers. Dan Bongino, the FBI's deputy director, wrote on X Tuesday, "We have asked our team to fully investigate allegations of targeted violence against religious groups at the Seattle concert. Freedom of religion isn't a suggestion." And Pastor Paula White Cain spoke out from the White House, saying the White House Faith Office condemns the violent disruption of Seattle's May Day USA worship event. Public officials must protect the inalienable rights of all citizens, regardless of their faith or religious beliefs.
That's Charlene Aaron from CBN. And I want to get into this because this is an interesting thing, right? You've got a bunch of radicals from the left that get together and do all sorts of crazy. And who's the bad guy, according to Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell? Well, it's the Christians that are infiltrating with anarchists. And I think that's crazy. But who's better to talk about this stuff than Jason Rantz? He's out in Seattle running the show out there. Jason Rantz, welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet, brother. So I know you've been out there, pounding the drum on this because you've got a good piece that's out there, and I saw you on the Fox News channel, and you're doing what you got to do. But give us the scoop, because this is a really interesting thing that they're attacking the cops. They're hitting them with these, urine-filled water balloons and whatnot. Yet somehow it was the Christians that were blamed. How does that work?
Yeah, well, that is typical in Seattle. I mean, in this case, you had a group of Christian worshipers basically getting together for a rally that was not initially planned at this particular park in the so-called gay neighborhood. For the folks who remember the autonomous zone, the park, Cal Anderson Park, that's where it was, the autonomous zone. So this is a place that is very well known amongst the activist crowd. So they got together, they did this under the banner of protecting children from gender extremism. But really, the rally this past Saturday was more about just celebrating faith. They were dancing, they were singing, and that was just too much for the radical left, who decided to show up. And there were 2 separate groups of counter-protesters. On the one hand, you have the nonviolent but incredibly annoying counter-protesters who were there to drown out the singing and the dancing and any of the messages. They were there to protest the way that they normally would, but it was nonviolent. Then you had the group of a mix of Antifa and other radicals who were there to cause problems. And to your point, they were throwing urine-soaked or urine-filled balloons. They were trying to disrupt the event and intimidate and bully. And they ended up getting violent. And there were 23 arrests. There were officers who were injured. One was sent to the hospital, and they were able to get the event to, shut down a little bit earlier than intended. Rather than condemn the violence and just keep it at that, the mayor, Bruce Harrell, had to also insult the Christian worshipers, calling them right-wing extremists, saying that they didn't share the values of the city of Seattle, and essentially implying that they were responsible. And what happened after that, unfortunately, we'll have to get into the next segment, but it was pretty outrageous.
Wow. Well, hold on right there. We're coming right back to find out part 2 of that. I'm very intrigued. Folks, we're coming right back with Jason Rantz, radio talk show host extraordinaire on KTTH in Seattle, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
God bless you, because literally I think you represent, the new voice of America. What you say is what people are listening to.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. That voice you just heard there, that was Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. She's actually scheduled to be with us on Monday. So keep it locked on this station for that. But I want to go back to our conversation with Jason Rantz. He's a rock star over at KTTH. He's a prolific writer. He knows exactly what's going on all across the country, but in particular in his stomping grounds of Seattle. Jason Rantz, we were talking about this pro-LGBTQ rally that occurred. The folks were wilding out, is the best way to put it, throwing stuff at the cops, doing all sorts of crazy. The mayor comes in and says, you don't align with our values, which are pro-LGBTQ and pro-mob and pro-criminal. And all that being said, then he blames the Christians that were there upholding their own values. Tell us what else happens.
Yeah, so after that happened, the Christian group said, you know what, we're going to go to City Hall and we're going to protest the mayor. He's going to apologize or resign, and we're going to do basically what we were doing at the park. We're just going to do it in front of City Hall, which is a lot of positivity, singing, dancing, worship, praising, and that's exactly what they did. And of course, the same kind of crazy activists that showed up to the park on Saturday showed up on Tuesday at this rally, and yet again, they got violent. Now, their intent, as always, is to intimidate and bully so that people don't come out and express any view that's different than their own. And keep in mind that the view from the Christian worshipers was actually pretty simple and very mainstream. Do not use children as, test subjects for gender transition. That a 13-year-old should not chop off her healthy breasts so that she could then become a quote-unquote boy. That was it. That was the message. And it turned violent. It turned harassing. There were 8 arrests in total. And, some of the images, and I was there, I was covering this live as it was going on. So if anyone wants to watch some of the videos, you can check out me on X. But they were swarming children and mothers as they were leaving the event. It was really disgusting. But this is what they do. And they do because they can get away with it. Of all the people that were arrested, I believe so far there's only been one official person charged. And there are going to be a lot of people who don't do anything. They're not going to go to jail. They're not going to pay a fine. They're not going to have anything on their record. They're just going to be released. And that is typical of the way Seattle handles these protests, quote unquote, when really it's just a mob and it's violence that's going to just perpetuate more violence because they get away with it.
Jason Rantz, this is typical of the left. It happens pretty often. But I was scrolling through Twitter before, and I saw a tweet from one of my favorite tweeters, a guy named Jason Rantz. And you're quote tweeting Pramila Jayapal. And apparently now they're in your neck of the woods again, her and her friends, the lefties that are out there. And I think we have a clip of that audio. Count Delacula, do we have it? All right, let's go for it.
Hi, it's Emily Randall. I'm here with my colleagues, Congresswoman Jayapal and Dexter. We're at the Northwest Detention Center getting ready to do an unannounced oversight visit. I'm so grateful to be joined by my colleagues. And anything you want to say about this visit?
Well, I'm just grateful to Congresswoman Randall. The Northwest Detention Center is right in her district, and to Congresswoman Dexter for driving up. I think it is very important for people to understand that it is actually our congressional duty, obligation to do oversight of detention facilities. It is written into statute. It is absolutely not appropriate for anybody to try and stop us from going into a detention center. These visits do not have to be announced. So we are here to do our oversight duty, to check in on some specific detainees that are here, and also to listen to all of the...
All right, I've had enough.
Here.
This woman's nuts. Tell me, Jason Rantz, what is going on with these people, and why are they trying to break into jails and detention facilities everywhere in America without an appointment?
Well, they're doing it so that when they get denied, they can claim that they're being illegally denied and that there's reason for it, that they're trying to hide something that's going on at these detention centers. These are all staged, and it's all with the intent of creating more propaganda. These are Democrats who are open border Democrats. Pramila Jayapal in particular is a congresswoman from here in Seattle. She's the squad grandmother, if you will, and this is what she does. Like so many other Democrats, she is someone who will always side with not just someone who's in this country illegally, but someone who's in this country illegally, and in addition to that, is committing pretty heinous crimes.
Is a criminal. Yeah.
That's her constituency, and she has no problem standing up for them. Meanwhile, she's doing absolutely nothing as far as, passing meaningful legislation or doing anything for her constituents in Seattle.
Jason Rantz, I love that name, by the way, the Squad Abuela, the Squad Grandma. That's terrific. But the listeners, right, they're probably going to the phones right now, waiting to call to say, I don't understand. Why do they look out for their constituents that can't even vote for them because they're criminal or because they're alien or because of this and because of that? And the reality is we don't always have a simple answer to that other than they're doing somebody's bidding. What's your take on that?
Weirdly, I do think that there's kind of a simple answer in the sense that these are folks who ultimately do not believe in borders. And they know that the more people that can come here illegally, the more power they end up getting. And it's twofold. Number
because
one,
of the apportionment.
Yes, 100%. Like the larger the census is able to count these folks, they get more power, they get more potential seats, they get more funding from the federal government into certain parts of their, respective communities. But in addition to that, the clear intention is to get voting rights for these individuals. They've already tried to do that on low-level cases in school boards or, in local elections. And thankfully, the courts have gotten in the way of that. But that doesn't always happen overnight. And still, the end goal is to provide full citizenship and everything that comes along with it for these individuals. That's what they're doing here. And it's playing the long game. I also think a lot of these folks believe that they're being heroic in standing up for, quote unquote, marginalized communities because they're presenting everyone who comes into this country illegally exactly the same. They make no distinction between someone who's coming here who undoubtedly is doing so for reasons that I understand. They want a better life. They're coming from places that are not as good as the United States. They make no distinction between that person and someone who comes here illegally and then commits a rape or a murder or is a drug dealer. They don't care. They're treating them the same, and they're clearly not the same.
100%. Jason Rantz, excellent analysis as always. Now, for everybody listening saying, we love this guy, Rantz, I want to hear more from him. How do they follow you? Where do they go? What's the website?
Yeah, I would say they have great taste. They're 100% correct. They can go, and if they're in Western Washington, KTTH 770 AM. But for everybody else, just look up Jason Rantz Show, wherever it is you get your podcast. Hit the subscribe button and give me a listen.
Outstanding. Jason Rantz, I appreciate it, brother. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. God bless you, brother.
Thanks, my friend.
You bet. And amigos, we come back with more of your thoughts, calls, reactions, and more from Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino, the deputy director of the FBI, stumbling on some interesting things that you've probably heard about in the news. We're going to talk about that together when I return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we're going to get to your thoughts, calls, reactions straight ahead. Keep it locked right here. But first, I want to get into this stuff. I meant to talk about this yesterday. It's just so many things. And then, I get long-winded and I say too much and then blah, 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 blah. And then, then you get a good lib that calls in and then it's over, right? But Deputy Director Dan Bongino, very interesting discovery, right? He wasn't even investigating this. He was just, it just fell in his lap, if you want, if you will, I should say. It revealed the discovery of a secret room at FBI headquarters that contained a trove of evidence from the James Comey era. And it was hidden from investigators with declassification efforts that are now underway. So I guess you and me can learn all about it. So listen to him talking about this because it's really remarkable. Go ahead.
Jim Comey taking a shot at the president. Oh, look at me. I'm such a victim. The president's going after me. He's making a ton of money on this book. The only person that got prosecuted was the president. Jim Comey, we're finding stuff even now. Wait till you read the stuff that's coming out.
Does he still have loyalists in the building? Because when I hear the FBI director saying, you guys are finding boxes that are hidden, okay, how does that happen in the Bureau?
Well, we were there a couple of weeks, and luckily there were a lot of people up there who grabbed us by the arm the minute we came in and said, thank you for being here. You know, we need to talk. There are people there who are really horrified at what happened. And there was a room, and we found stuff, a lot of stuff.
A hidden room.
I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not mentioned to us. And then we found stuff in there, and a lot of it's from the Comey era, and we are working our damnedest right now to declassify. And just so you know, because I get the public, I totally understand people saying, well, do it now. The process is not all the information is ours to declassify. Some is other intelligence agencies. It's not, we literally can't do it. Once that gets done and that gets out there and you read some of the stuff we found that, by the way, was not processed through the normal procedure, digitizing it, putting in FBI records. We found it in bags hiding under Jim Comey's FBI. Quickly, you're going to be stunned.
Going to be stunned. He said this stuff was stunning. And listen, I get it. I spent a little bit of time in a state government, right? I worked in the state of New Jersey. And the things that I saw there, I didn't find any hidden rooms. Matter of fact, it was quite the opposite. They didn't do anything, right? They literally wouldn't put anything in writing. It's like the bureaucrat school, the school of the deep state, if you will, in Jersey. They teach you how to say two things. There's only two things you're allowed to say, right? They go like this. Well, we definitely take that very seriously. Number one, when you're upset, that's what you say. Number two, when you have a complaint and you don't want to seem dismissive, you say, well, we can definitely have a conversation about that. If you want to sound more reassuring, you say, we will definitely have a conversation about that. Not that we should. We will. Right? And do you email things back and forth? Nope. You pick up the phone. You pick up the phone, you hit somebody's extension, you say, hi, can you see me? Hi, can I see you? That's it. Nothing is ever written down. And if it is, it's written down as what is called a memo to file so that it lasts forever. And if you get an email, trust and believe that's going into some report somewhere. Nobody emails anybody there. If your boss is emailing you something, they're building a case. This is how they roll. I've seen it too many times to know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I never found any hidden rooms. But who knows? I wasn't there that long. I figured out quick, this ain't for me. Let me get out of Dodge. So the fact that they did not advertise, hey, by the way, we have a place with all these old records and blah, 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 doesn't surprise me that, former Director Comey was putting together his own presidential library, and he's not even president, right? Just trying to have his own documents, just like Joe Biden had all his documents. And that's what people do with the documents, and that's the point that I'm making here. If there are documents and people have documents and they want them, that's because they believe there's a use for those documents somewhere. And they're probably not about them, right? I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of things there about Comey. They're probably about a lot of other people and what, in a way that can be leveraged against other people. That's the only time people are saving stuff in the government. So it's a shame. So kudos to Trump and Bongino and Kash Patel, everybody on that team, Pam Bondi, the rest of the administration, for truly daily trying to represent the people, trying to increase transparency, because the way the government has operated for too long is definitely not in the interest of you or me or we the people. Sadly, the way that government has existed and operated has been to promote they, the government, they, the politician, they, the deep state, not we the people. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our late night national town hall conversation. And today in the White House, I was at lunch and I saw everywhere breaking news, CNN, wall-to-wall coverage. Elon Musk hanging out in the White House with El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, with the DOGE father, the chairman of the DOGE committee, the Department of Government Efficiency. And guess what? Today's his last day because he leaves on the 31st of May. They don't work on Saturdays. And today was the day. So listen to Elon Musk bidding farewell to his chairmanship of the DOGE service.
That this is not the end of DOGE, but really the beginning. My time as a special government employee necessarily had to end. It was a limited time thing. It's 134 days, I believe, which ends in a few days. So that it comes with a time limit. But the DOGE team will only grow stronger over time. The DOGE influence will only grow stronger. I'd liken it to sort of Buddhism. It's like a way of life. So it is permeating throughout the government.
He went on to mention a few things about how confident he is that over time we're going to see the $1 trillion in savings, reduction, $1 trillion of waste, and fraud reduction. And in terms of fiscal year 25, fiscal year 26, the debt is over $160 billion. And that's climbing. So he said he expects that the number will probably go to over $200 billion, and that means the DOGE team is doing an incredible job because they're going to continue doing an incredible job, and they'll continue visiting the White House, and he's going to continue being an advisor to the president. So he's looking forward to being back in that room. He said, back in that amazing room is how the quote goes. So bidding farewell to Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk is not the only person leaving Washington. Well, at least not leaving Washington, but leaving the Washington airwaves. Count Delacula, my producer, my board operator, the one who keeps the plane in the air, Tom Delac, known to me and to you as Count Delacula. This guy is a veteran. I've been doing radio for 5 minutes, 7 years. He's been in radio 20 plus years. He's been there for a long time. He's a true professional. It's a shame to see him go, but I wish him the best in everything he does. Count Delacula, you will be sorely missed. And I have to say, honestly, in front of everybody in the studio, everybody in America, I am a better person today for having known you for the last 2 or 3 years. So I salute you, and I wish you the best. Godspeed to the Count. And like Elon said, gone but not forever. Hopefully we'll have the Count back for visits. And I'm also hopeful that we will continue, right, the tradition of excellence that the Count brought to the table and bringing you this wonderful live program every single night. So we're going to do that. Plus, there is a lot more to come in our program this evening. We have some discussion on what's going on with how public schools are failing children. We have some additional discussion on the perspective of a former Miami cop and how to protect America. This is a really interesting conversation I can't wait to get into. So we're going to talk about that. And somehow Jason Statham plays a role in it. You know, the guy from the Transporter and from the Beehive. So anyway, we're going to continue our conversations. But for some of you, this is where we bid you adieu. So to you, I say, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Everybody else, I'm coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. We are live, we're national, happy to be here with you. 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let me give you some of the headlines here. I'm looking at some stuff. What an interesting day for a Friday, right? Sometimes Fridays in May, June, July, they're kind of slow. August, forget about it. But Trump tells U.S. steel workers, you are going to stay an American company. I love that. I love that. All right. This was one of those things that Trump campaigned on and talked about. We need American steel, you know? And hey, look at that. Putting his money where his mouth is, trying to keep it in the United States. Let me see. What else? Mexican authorities arresting Colombian mercenaries for building explosives for the cartels. All right. They have to step their game up. And guess whose economy is booming as China starts to get weaker? India's, right? Looking at a picture here of Prime Minister Modi and India reporting a 7.4% percentage growth for their economy between January and March of 2025, coming in much higher than the predictions that were made in Wall Street. They predicted 6.7% growth, and a lot better than the 5.4% growth that China got. So China grew at 5.4, India at 7.4. Look at that. Look who got spanked. China. And they got spanked by India. Now, this is an interesting thing, right? And this is in a piece in Breitbart. It's always good practice to put an asterisk next to any figures released by the duplicitous Chinese government, because the Chinese National Bureau of Statistics posted 5.4% growth for the first quarter, congratulating the strong leadership of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China with Comrade Xi Jinping as its head, or at its core. So if China's saying they're at 5.4, he's saying they're fake, phony fraud. They probably did a lot less than that, which is consistent with the analysis we've had on this program from guys like Gordon Chang and General Blaine Holt and others who follow what's going on in Asia. So my take is this is why they were willing to make a deal and then say, no, it was Trump that wanted to make the deal. No, forget about it. No. I know that I haven't seen any changes on Amazon. I haven't seen a lot of changes in a lot of places. I've seen a lot of hype, but I'm not starving and I'm not dying. And I don't think many people are as a result of these tariffs. Although the Democrats are crying bloody murder, China has not been, they haven't been hurting me. But El Trompito says that China totally violated the tariff agreement, so maybe that's exactly why we're not feeling the pain. Listen to this.
Reinstate the tariffs on China. You said that they violated the agreement with the U.S.
Well, they did. They violated a big part of the agreement we made. You know, if you read that whole statement, I was very nice to them. I helped them because they were in trouble with the stoppage of a massive amount of business. But I'm sure that I'll speak to President Xi and hopefully we'll work that out. But yeah, that's a violation of the agreement.
So President Trump saying that they've totally violated the agreement with the United States after this pause and, increasing tariffs. In a Truth Social post, President Trump said the 145% tariffs he had placed on China and their imports made it virtually impossible for China to trade with the United States. He said he opted to offer China a deal for their sake, referencing reports of civil unrest amongst the Chinese citizens who obviously want to work in the factories. And if the factories are shut down, not a lot going on. 2 weeks ago, China was in grave economic danger, he wrote. Many factories closed, and there was, to put it mildly, civil unrest. I saw what was happening and I didn't like it for them and not for us. I made a fast deal with China in order to save them from what I thought was going to be a very bad situation. And I didn't want to see that happen. So fast forward, you've got this deal that they make and the markets rallied. Everybody loved that. Again, back to Trump's tweet, Truth Social post, excuse me. Because of this deal, maybe I could do it in my Trump voice. Because of this deal, everybody quickly stabilized and China got back to business as usual. Everybody was happy. That's the good news. He goes on to say the bad news is that China, perhaps not surprisingly to some, has totally violated its agreement with us. So much for being Mr. Nice Guy. That's great. Well, good for you, Mr. President. You gave him the benefit of the doubt. You give him a little bit of an olive branch, and then you got to keep doing what you're doing. All right? That's how the negotiations process works. And nobody knows that better than a real estate guy. All right? People that have apartment buildings, they know. You meet people, the nicest people. Oh, can you rent me a place? Can you do this? You make all sorts of deals for people, for tenants. You bend over backwards sometimes, and then guess what? They screw you nonetheless. That's just part and parcel of how the game is played, right? They say, charge it to the game. Don't hate the player, hate the game. In this case, I think you got to hate both, right? You got to hate the player because Xi Jinping is dirty, right? The way they steal intellectual property from the United States and other countries and prostitute it as if it's their own. They do what they feel like. They don't care. Anyway, that's the story on China. There was something else I wanted to share with you. Oh, my gosh, big Supreme Court victory that President Trump scored today in a 7-2 decision. The Supreme Court saying they will allow the Trump administration, the government of the United States, to revoke the immigration parole for 500,000 illegal immigrants that Biden had granted, giving them legal status. So 7-2 victory for Trump in the Supreme Court on another 500,000 immigrants. Way to go, El Trumpito. So we're going to have a lot of conversation about a lot of things. And one of the things that I'm looking at here, I'm looking now at a different page. Another interesting story here. India's economy, Panama, blah, blah, blah. China's decoupling, or Panama's decoupling from China. And then here's this one. Trans teen dominates competition at Minneapolis Girls Softball Championship. All right. This is an ongoing thing. In Nebraska, the state lawmakers passed a bill preventing transgender identification from males or males that identify as transgender from entering into female sports. So good for those in Nebraska. Maybe we can get that happening all across the country at the state level, the way President Trump did early on, and we'd be in better shape. And one of the folks that we talked about that with pretty frequently was Sarah Parshall Perry. She's been on the front lines of what's going on that front, as well as education. And she's the senior legal fellow vice president at Parents Defending Education. And she also used to be the assistant counsel in the secretary's office for the Department of Education in the Civil Rights Office. So she knows a thing or two about what's going on. And interestingly, there is an op-ed that she wrote titled, "Schools Are Flunking the First Amendment." And I said, you know what? When I saw that, I said, I gotta talk to Sarah Parshall Perry, because she knows these issues better than most. And not only that, she explains them with ease, right? It's amazing how she speaks legalese, and she can make it make sense for a guy like me. So keep it locked right here. We're going to have a conversation with her on that topic, plus your thoughts, your calls, your reactions. Again, we're live and national. If you hear me, I'm talking right now, so I'm looking forward to speaking with you as well. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Supreme Court declined to hear a Massachusetts student's challenge to his middle school's ban on him wearing a T-shirt with the slogan, "There are only two genders." School administrators pointed to the student dress code, which bars any hate speech or imagery, saying they were merely enforcing those requirements in order to avoid disruption in school. The students' lawyers argue the dress code's restrictions on speech are unconstitutional. Both a federal district court judge and the Boston-based First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the school.
Well, how about that, right? You can't wear a shirt that says there are two genders because the school will say it's hate speech. And, you know, it's funny. This is not necessarily what I want to talk about, but I have to react to this because my thinking is this, right? While I would argue that that is a fundamental right of mine because I would say it's religious speech, right? Adam and Eve, there's only two genders. However, they would turn around and make the case that it's hate speech, which, last I checked, is protected under the Constitution. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job. And guess what? I'm kidding, by the way, on that. But what's interesting about this is one would argue, at least I would, maybe I'm wrong, but I would say that they've, in effect, made leftism, progressivism, secular humanism their religion, and the school is, in fact, the government, and they are endorsing that religion because it's amazing how much they stick up for things that they shouldn't be sticking up for. But I want to talk about that and how schools are flunking the First Amendment because that's the title of an op-ed in the Washington Times. It's by Sarah Parshall Perry. She's a regular on here. We love her. And she walks us through a number of things about the case in New Hampshire and other things that I feel are just, there's way too much conversation about this, that this should be simpler, but yet it's not. Sarah Parshall Perry, Vice President over at Parents Defending Education. Welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me, Rich. I always love doing your show.
Thank you. Now, if you don't mind, what do you think about this T-shirt case? Because I think that T-shirt case is out of control.
Boy, I do too. And I got to tell you, it was a real heartbreak for me because the day that the op-ed came out, within a few hours, the Supreme Court decided that they were not going to hear the case that I referenced in that Washington Times op-ed. I was very hopeful that the Supreme Court would take this case because it seems to me to be a very cut and dry free speech case. I thought even the liberals are going to be able to get on board about this. There are more than 100 years of Supreme Court jurisprudence in which the court has said specifically students don't relinquish free speech rights at the schoolhouse doors. And in fact, we saw cases, specifically the West Virginia versus Barnett case, for example, in which students could be not forced to salute the American flag or say the Pledge of Allegiance. They could wear black armbands in protest of the Vietnam War. And yet, because I think, Rich, our culture has become so gender obsessed, this is apparently the one thing about which we are not allowed culturally to have differing perspectives. And I tip my hat to Liam Morrison, the young man who was the namesake in LM versus Town of Middleborough. He was the young middle school student who's now come out openly. He's now of majority age, and he said, you know, I was the one who wore the T-shirt. I've got to tell you, I applaud him for being a young man at 13 who had the gumption to be able to say, I'm going to make a stand. I'm going to simply wear a very quiet statement of what I believe personally. And not only the district court, but the First Circuit Appellate Court both got it wrong. And by the time it got all the way to the Supreme Court, it was rescheduled 10 times. Well, to my mind, Rich, that very often indicates that the Supreme Court is going to take a case. For example, the Dobbs decision, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health, overturning the landmark Roe versus Wade, was rescheduled 12 times. I thought, okay, you've got 3 justices on the fence. We've just got to get one more justice to buy in. It takes 4 justices to agree on a cert grant. Unfortunately, when that denial of cert came out, I was exceptionally disappointed. But Justice Alito wrote a very strenuous dissent from denial of cert, and he basically called the rest of the justices cowards, saying, We are forgetting what we've held in the past. Even if his perspective is unpopular, it is all the more in need of protection because unpopular opinions have more requirement for protection than popular ones. But this was an opportunity to clarify, I think, very cut and dry First Amendment rights for students on campus, especially as relates to controversial issues. For whatever reason, the Supreme Court declined to intervene.
Is this the cowardice of John Roberts or some legal issue that I'm just not catching?
So that's a great question. I think, quite frankly, we're seeing a lot from John Roberts here lately in which he is trying to moderate as much as possible and find a centrist middle with a lot of these hot-button issues. Now, remember, we've seen, Rich, incredibly high-profile cases this term. In fact, a lot of them have yet to be ruled on. I give you Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. This is porn in the First Amendment. I give you McAllister versus South Carolina. This is whether or not you can restrict Medicaid funding for abortion. I give you U.S. versus Scarametti. Is a ban on gender-affirming care for minors constitutional? I give you Mahmoud versus Taylor. Can religious parents opt their children out of LGBTQ-themed curriculum because it's a violation of their religious liberty? We've seen everything from all of that to ghost gun bans to more. This is a huge term. And in fact, when I was at Heritage Foundation, where I was before I took the helm in leadership at Defending Education, I was covering many of these issues. And every time I thought the term could not get more high profile, they would pick another hot button case. I do believe in this instance, if I had to guess, John Roberts had said probably behind closed door in chambers, we've had enough of controversial issues, and we're taking two cases. We've already heard argument on two cases that tangentially touch on gender identity. We don't want to take another one. But quite frankly, as Justice Alito said in his dissent, this is an issue that is going to come back in one form or another.
So what's the holdup? Why are they punting? Is it safe to say?
You know, I think there is probably a sense of the court that they are not willing to tolerate additional cases of highly controversial, high-profile status because they've seen so many issues touching on things like free speech and regulation of porn and so-called gender-affirming care, minors being opted out of sex-themed curriculum, to abortion Medicaid restrictions. I quite frankly think that the court did not have the stomach for something like this. They did not have the actual guts to take it up. And Alito, who quite frankly, to my mind, he and Thomas are now the conservative stalwarts. But I've got to tell you, even Justice Breyer, before he left, who was often called the lion of liberalism, actually issued an opinion on free speech saying classrooms are the nurseries of democracy. Seems like this court has forgotten that.
Wow. Well, Sarah Parshall Perry, keep it locked right there. We're coming right back. We're going to continue this conversation with Sarah Parshall Perry, continuing to take apart her piece in the Washington Times. Schools are flunking the First Amendment, plus an update on a couple other things. Don't go anywhere. It's Sarah Parshall Perry, Defending Education, and me, Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A battle waged by a group of Fairfax County Public Schools parents is back in the spotlight.
We thought that our case was dead, and now we are reborn.
On Wednesday, Virginia's Attorney General, Jason Rantz, announced his office completed an investigation into changes made to the admissions process at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. Rantz says the changes violated the Virginia Human Rights Act and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
The old system was simple. If you had the test scores and you had the grades, you could go to TJ. Instead, they adapted this equity-based system to diminish Asian American students.
Rantz also says his investigation found that school board members exchanged messages showing they knew the changes would impact Asian American students.
But what this board did was pit one race against another, manipulating the system to produce their desired racial makeup.
So this was a case, I don't know if you remember, we had a lot of discussion on, and I'm glad to see that the Attorney General, the state Attorney General in Virginia is making moves on it. But it just highlights again how, I'm going to use the word sick, and I don't mean that in a pejorative, I mean that in as an adjective, how ill the school system is. It's suffering, and it goes perfectly, in my opinion, with this op-ed in the Washington Times, how schools are flunking the First Amendment. I think they're not only flunking in the First Amendment, I think they're flunking in a couple of different areas, mainly failing families and children. But to continue our discussion on that and this and so many other items that are of import, we go to Sarah Parshall Perry. She is the VP at Defending Education. And Sarah, I know you were finishing a point from the previous topic, and I'm curious to know what you think of what's going on here at Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, there's so much to say about TJ. You know, this really is, unfortunately, one of the best schools in the country that has become ground zero for race essentialism. Rich, it's so bad that we've actually filed 2 related complaints, once against Fairfax County Public Schools on violation of Title VI, which is exactly what the Attorney General just referenced in that press clip. The Title VI of the Civil Rights Act guarantees any federally funded program will not discriminate on the basis of race, national origin, or ethnicity. So when you play games and you promote one race over another, or you take an admissions program and give some races a plus and other races a minus, you are definitely discriminating on the basis of race. That's unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. It's a violation of civil rights law. And if you drill down on Thomas Jefferson High School, we've actually just filed, and I mean within the past 3 days, Rich, an IRS complaint against Thomas Jefferson High School. Why? Because we've discovered through Freedom of Information Act requests that there are apparently some nefarious dealings between Thomas Jefferson and 3 Chinese overseas communist contractors. Now, why does this matter? Because the money was passed through, it appears, through the Thomas Jefferson Fund, which is their nonprofit charitable arm. It is tax deductible, completely nonprofit, tax-free. These donations, I'm using big air quotes, about $4 million worth, went into the fund, were funneled out through the other side for improvements at Thomas Jefferson High School. And in exchange, 3 communist-based contractors in China specifically were given intellectual property of Thomas Jefferson, floor plans, blueprints, curriculum, student development plans, and more to create no fewer than 10 communist-based Chinese clone schools in China. So if that doesn't make your hair stand up, one of the best nation's high schools is now selling its intellectual property to one of our nation's avowed adversaries because they apparently wanted to take advantage of $4 million or so in so-called, quote-unquote, charitable deductions through a nonprofit arm. So this isn't just tax evasion, not just what appears to be tax fraud. This is a major national security interest. So we just filed a federal complaint with the IRS, and our hope is that the IRS takes a very hard look at what's happening at Thomas Jefferson High School.
All right, Sarah, let's take this one step at a time. You know, I'm a school board member. I have been for a long time at a charter school in New Jersey. And to my knowledge, and I could be wrong on this, but we have a similar nonprofit. It's called Friends Of. And if a donation is made to Friends Of to build an annex, to build a school, whatever the case is, I think we would be committing a crime if we were to award a contract to the same people that gave us the donation. Isn't that illegal?
That's exactly right. In fact, the entire purpose of a charitable donation is not a pay-for-play scenario. That's exactly what we've seen here. The fund, the Friends of Thomas Jefferson, ironically very similarly named to the one for your particular school board, was actually acting, it appears to us, based on the facts we have, and they are extensive. We have filed a 25-page complaint with the IRS. The documents we have, the information we have, the research we've done indicates that Thomas Jefferson, Friends of Thomas Jefferson Funds, the nonprofit, was acting as a pass-through. If that's the case, you are not allowed to give anything back for the charitable donations you get. Because if that's the case, they should be paying you directly. Otherwise, you're evading federal tax liabilities, and that would have cost the school district and the particular school about $1 million. That is a huge tax liability for this specific school. So you're right. Donations are one thing. If you turn around and provide something for those donations, you're in a contract, and you cannot report those as charitable deductions. That is a violation of federal law.
Wow. And I'm pretty sure, and again, I don't know Virginia state laws, but I know I have to do ethics training every year. And I know New Jersey laws say that if I give a speech somewhere and the people who pay me to give a speech or pay for my flight or anything like that, any honorarium, any gift in kind, anything like that, and they do business with the school, I have to disclose that or I'm in violation. So I just don't see how, I don't know, maybe Virginia's more lax than New Jersey, but you would think that New Jersey has more loopholes for fraud than anybody.
Well, I got to tell you, remember that Virginia, and now I'm a relatively new denizen of the free Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm sort of a refugee of the state of Maryland. I've left West War's state of Maryland. I'm now in Northern Virginia, just literally 10 minutes from the actual center of D.C. and Capitol Hill. But I've got to tell you right now, a lot of what the governor and the attorney general are having to do right now is clean up the pieces from Governor Northam, because you've got to realize this is one of the most progressive and aggressive administrations we've seen in the Commonwealth. They did not care about things like race essentialism. Remember, Governor Northam got on air and said specifically, if a child was born, but a mother wanted to abort that child up until the moment of birth, until the point of crowning, they would, quote, have a conversation between the mother and the doctor, and literally advocated for infanticide over open airwaves. This administration, the Youngkin administration, has got its work cut out for it. It is doing yeoman's work. I fully support them, but I got to tell you, it's organizations like ours that have got to target individual school districts who think they can get away with murder, and, I might add, with partnering with foreign adversaries, specifically because the money is more important to them than character and following federal edict.
Wow. That is both scary and eye-opening and important for everybody to know all at the same time, because I've seen instances of that where China's thrown their money around with higher ed to get foreign students in. So I'm happy to see what's happening with Harvard. But I did not know that they were doing that at, magnet schools in Virginia, of all places.
Yeah.
So a lot to look out for. Now, Sarah, I know people are really interested in the work that you guys are doing. Tell us how to find, your new website and more about what you're doing.
I'm very active on Twitter. Everybody else can follow me on X. Of course, I'm of a certain age, so I will always call it Twitter, though, I admire what Elon Musk has done Follow me on at Sarah P. Perry, and you can go to our website, defendinged.org, and we have research reports and dispatches that we are breaking every single day. We find new schools, new districts, new states. We've launched a federal lawsuit against the state of Colorado. We'll talk about that on another episode of your show, Rich. But I've got to tell you, we are very, very active right now. It's a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, but we have the administration sort of wind at our back. We are excited about the fact that we can return America to a race-neutral, high-quality American education for every student, no matter their disability, no matter their sex, no matter their skin color. That is my passion as someone who served at the Department of Education, someone who's a mother of 3 kids who have gone through public education. I want that for every American kid, and I think we're well on the right track.
Amen to that. And let me tell you, so much damage, Sarah Parshall Perry, I think was done in the Biden years, where it's part of the national discourse to think that it's okay, racism one way or the other, right? Whether it's pro-black, pro-white, pro-any race.
Yeah.
The idea is for us to not utilize race as, as any criteria, right? We should, irrespective of race, we should be looking at what you bring to the table, the merit that is involved in whatever task we're doing. And I feel like we've gone so far away from meritocracy and so far into the weeds on all of this other stuff. So Godspeed to you for all the work you're doing.
Rich, thank you so much. It is always a joy to be with you. And to somebody who shares a vision and has taken on the mantle of a political office, I have always said is the most important, which is school board. So kudos to you as well, friend.
Thank you. Well, God bless you. And Sarah Parshall Perry, folks, give her a follow. She's terrific, and we'll have you back real soon. Thank you.
Thanks again, Rich.
You bet. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, reactions. Anybody who wants to fight with me, there's always a few of those out there. Happy to chat with everybody. You know the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You are educating the public, and the public is getting good information if they listen to your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And check this out. You might have seen an interview on CNN with the recently released hostage who was being held by Hamas, where he says the terrorists, the Hamas terrorists, began to treat him better when Trump won because they were hoping that Kamala would actually win. And it was bizarre to hear someone say that, I guess to confirm what many of us were thinking. Go right ahead.
Terrorists.
We're afraid of Trump.
Yeah, they wanted Kamala to be chosen, to be elected.
You talked politics with them?
Yeah. They wanted Kamala to be elected. When Trump became president, the way they treated us changed. For me, personally, this is what I
think
felt.
because they anticipated that a deal would come soon.
Yeah.
And that's when they started giving you more food.
Exactly. More food, treated me better, stopped cursing me, stopped spitting on me.
Stopped spitting on me. They fed him better. I mean, just amazing, right? Just amazing. Now, that is Omer Shem-Tov in his interview on CNN. Amazing to me that this is, what he got into there with them, admitting they would, but I could see it. I could see it happening. When you have these situations, people talk about all sorts of things, right? There's lots of things that you've heard people in similar stories, the things that they say they talk about. And it's usually shocking, one way or the other, like what they actually end up talking about. Anyway, they were rooting for Kamala. The Hamas terrorists were rooting for Kamala. I think that's all I need to hear. Let's go to the phones. I want to go to Mark, Broadview, Illinois, WLS. Mark, go right ahead.
How you doing, Rich?
Wonderful.
I just wanted to comment. I voted for Trump, and I don't like his policies in the Middle East. He's dealing with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Houthis, and he's building golf courses and hotels over there. And
what did you expect him to do?
What's that?
What did you expect him to do?
I would, when you're dealing with savages, you should send a B-52 like Nixon and bomb the hell out of them. And
so
then
let me ask you a question, Mark, because he had been president once before, and his approach toward the Middle East then was signing something called the Abraham Accords, right? And he made peace with Qatar. He made peace with Bahrain. He made peace. All of these people were part of this peace accord known as the Abraham Accords, minus, a handful of countries. And it didn't surprise me that the president who says, let's make a deal and it's not a bad thing that we get along, is trying to make more friends across the globe. So did you really think he was going to drop a B-52, or was that just your wishful thinking?
No, I'm just saying, when you're dealing with the Palestinians and Hamas and Iran, you cannot go with the olive branch because they're just going to take, he's just kicking the can down the road. They're going to get nukes
right,
sooner
but
or later.
These are different things. The Palestinians, well, hang on a second, Mark, because the Palestinians and Iran, and I think you're talking about Hamas, but Iran, Hamas, the Houthis, and who else? Hezbollah. These people are all proxies of Iran. And I think the posture towards Iran has been tough, right? Maximum pressure campaign, et cetera. These people that he's been ingratiating himself with are all against Iran. And if you saw when he said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon in their house, in their land, in their palace, he got a standing ovation. So clearly they're against Iran as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I'm just saying, when you're trying to deal with savages that are kidnapping, raping people, and they won't release the hostages, you can't deal with these people. I mean,
I'm really confused because you said you don't like that he's talking to Qatar, but Qatar isn't the one taking the hostages.
Qatar is supported by Iran, who is supporting Hamas.
Yeah, I don't know that that's accurate. I think you have some members, some people in Iran that are openly sympathetic towards Hamas, but the king there, those people are not openly sympathetic. I don't know that I could agree with that point. So I think we'll have to agree to disagree. Mark in Broadview, Illinois, thank you for the call. WLS, folks, your calls and more coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Let's hit the phones. Tony calling us from Montreal, Canada. WVMT, less than a minute on the clock. Go for it.
How you doing, Rich? I just want to say that the new DEI politicians at the local level, like Burlington Mayor, her name is Mayor Emma Mulvaney Stanek, hired her wife as director of Waterworks, gave her a $16,000 raise to $141,000 because she felt it was worth it to keep an employee, but she said she did not get involved with the actual hiring, the raise. But this is the type of thing that the left is doing. They are going to control the local levels and try to impose and block the Trump agenda.
That's what they do. They use all the influence they can to get the outcome they need. It's all about power and hustling. Thanks, Tony. I appreciate it, brother. Amigos, we're coming back with another hour of action-packed, stimulating talk. I'm Rich Valdez. Keep it locked right here.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Friday night. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, 11 in the East Coast time zone where I am. Our friends in other time zones are in other times, but happy to be here nonetheless. Our phone number, if you want to join us, we're live, we're national, 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. If you're not able to get through, because for whatever reason, you can tweet at me, at Rich Valdez with an S. And I want to get into a number of things tonight. We've had some really good conversation on the legal battles that are going on, defending children in the education space. We've had some really interesting conversation about how the liberal left, the progressive left, the radicals were throwing urine-filled balloons at the cops in a protest to promote the LGBTQ plus community. And at the end of the day, the mayor comes out and blames the Christians that were there protesting the fact that kids should not have gender-affirming care, that boys should not play in girls' sports, that boys should be boys and girls should be girls. That's part of what we've been talking about all night. And we're also going to have some additional conversation on America, the deep state. How do we save America? And I guess the bigger question is, are you on the same page? Do you think America needs some saving? Do you think that America's beyond reproach? Do you think that if we all work together to do the right thing, we can make a change? I'm one of those optimists that says yes. I'm one of those people that thinks, you know what? You get enough people that love their country, enough people that want to see reduced taxes, enough people that are tired of certain things like big government and other things. You put them all together and they will hold their nose and vote for someone they don't like. They will vote for someone they love. They will cross the party lines. And we saw it this past November, right? When you saw 69% of Hispanics that vote in America voted for Donald Trump. Donald J. Trump, Donaldus Magnus, El Trumpito, the 45th and 47th president of these United States. Another voting demographic, so you had Hispanic men, Hispanic women, black men coming in heavy for Donaldus Magnus, right? Putting him over the top. I think it was Hispanics that really put him over the top, but tremendous gains with black voters, in particular men. And it's my suspicion that Trump will gain some gains, right? He's going to make headway with African-American women in the next election. And it won't be Trump per se, right? His numbers might improve with them, but in the midterm elections, I think we're going to see some improvement because people have been really held back by some emotion, some propaganda, and a whole lot of fake news. I mean, there has been a whole lot of fake news going on for a long, long time. And I think people now are angry, right? They're angry. I'm not angry. You know, I sit here and I laugh at everything. I make jokes at everything. You know, they're cursing me and I'm like, you're a pendejo. I really don't get mad. Why? Because I've seen this stuff for what it is for a long time. And it's not my personality. I don't like getting angry. But every now and again, you put me in a car, I'm angry. I'm always angry when I'm driving. But I say that to say there's some people that are, I'm going to call them new converts to conservatism. And they're angry. And the reason they're angry is because they were once Democrats. Many of them voted for Barack Obama twice. And because they put their money and their effort behind hope and change and did not get the hope and change they were looking for, they feel duped. They feel like they got gypped. They feel like they want a refund. And that's why they're with Trump now. And I think a lot of them liked what they got with Trump, with more minority groups, again, just using that as a standard because I happen to belong to one of those groups, Asians, Hispanics, African Americans, to just name those three, all increasing their home ownership and their median household income during the first Trump administration, right? Then friends of mine who had a beautiful apartment not far from where I live decided to go buy a house in an even nicer neighborhood, paying less than $500,000 for a big old house in Bergen County, unheard of. And guess what he got? 2.5% mortgage. Why? Again, thanks to El Trompito and the policies that were going on at that time. So many people gained wealth in many ways, right? Not everybody got to buy a house. Some people took that cruise that they were always wanting to take instead of going to their local beach as their family vacation. They expanded their family vacation. Many people grew in different ways, right? It wasn't all about that. It might have been making more money in overtime, getting a new job, getting a raise, all sorts of things. Wonderful. Then comes Biden, overseeing inflation, the highest inflation in 43 years. Where are we now? The lowest inflation we've seen in the last 4 years. So we're going in the right direction. But I bring all of this up to say all of these people make up a big part of the puzzle. And there's people in Washington that work against people. There's people within these media organizations that work against these people's interests. And this is why they're mad. Because they're like, I did everything I was supposed to do. I got a brother. My brother was a John McCain guy. He liked Lieberman, voted for Obama twice. He loved Al Gore, couldn't stand George W. Bush. And now he loves Trump. And he's the first one to tell you, these people lied to me. They lied to me. They told me this, that, and whatever. And I went with everything. I went with all of it. And none of it worked. Trump is the one that actually kept his word and made things happen. And he bought a bunch of properties, too, during Trump's first term. He had some, and he bought more. So, point is, because there was a boom. People want to do well. People don't want to fail in life. People want to win. And how do you get to that win? Many different ways. But you don't get there when you're getting lied to by the media, or when the media is telling you things that are interesting and entertaining. And I like to tell you those things too. And I'll tell you some in a little bit. I'm seeing this article right here on CNN that you're not going to believe. Or as the saying goes, I was today years old when I found this thing out. But before I get to that, I want to finish this thought. And the thought is, people decided to give Trump a chance. And it's not really Trump, right, that they're giving a chance to. It's a new way of doing things. It's, all right, maybe we don't need to go to war all the time. Maybe we don't need to spend money on everything that's not an American interest. Maybe we really do need to put America first. Maybe we do need a rough around the edges, that's their assessment of him. I think Donald Trump is probably one of the smoothest dudes in the room that is able to pull off all this deal making. But they call him a bull in a china shop. If we go with that analogy, people decided we want the bull in the china shop. Maybe we've got too much China. Maybe we need to get rid of some of it. Maybe we have too much swamp. Maybe we have too much government, too much bureaucracy. And I think people have become hip to that, right? And now that they're hip to it, they're like, you know what? We don't need this stuff. So now they're angry. They're like, you know what? When you start coming with your Adam Schiff nonsense, they're like, Adam Schiff, you're a fake, phony, a fraud. When they hear Elizabeth Warren saying something, they say, hold on, Senator Pocahontas. I know the truth about you. And it, to me, from a political observer's perspective, it's glorious to watch this stuff. But it really does warm the heart that people are embracing America for what it is, seeing the opportunity in our country. Hispanics leading the way, saying, we don't want illegal immigration. For years, you were lied to and told by a bunch of white liberals that Hispanics are all about the border. That's our big issue. And if you're not pro-illegal immigration, you're going to lose the Hispanic vote. Trump proved that wrong. He came and said, I'm going to build a wall and deport everybody. And who voted for him at 69%? The Hispanics. Because the fake news told you that they wouldn't. And this is why I'm railing on the fake news, because they say a lot of things. And they say there is no deep state. And they say there is no this. And, oh, you're exaggerating. No, none of it. All of the above. There is a deep state. There are people out there that are paying a lot of money to see their agenda move forward. And for the first time in a long time, some of the people paying that money towards, donations they made to MAGA, billionaires that support MAGA, finally they're seeing some dividends here, right? They're saying, wow, America's actually becoming better. And I love that. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story. Over the summer, or maybe last year, my daughter was away at school. She's graduated now, but she was away at school at Liberty University. And she comes and she says, Dad, I saw this movie. I think you should watch. She's like, it's not my kind of movie. There's a lot of cursing. There's a lot of killing. I was like, I didn't think you'd like that. She really doesn't like action movies like that. But she liked this one because she liked the story. And she said, it sounds like the stuff that you talk about on the radio about this president whose son had like a drug problem and was compromised and had put the whole country in jeopardy. And the movie's called The Beekeeper. And the star of the movie is the action superstar Jason Statham, right? Jason Statham is this, the guy who plays the transporter. The British guy, bald guy with the beard, 5 o'clock shadow, can kick your butt with his pinky, that type of thing. And all that, I say, to say, this movie, The Beehive, has become a fave in my house, right? I have 2 daughters, and they both like this movie, and they're not into action movies at all, but they enjoyed that movie. And I read an article, or parts of this article, making a juxtaposition to the Beehive movie and the deep state issues that we have in America. And I thought this was very interesting. And it was coming from a retired detective from, I think he's the Miami police. And I said, you know what? This is a conversation I want to have because it's a really interesting piece in Think American. And I want to share that with you along with our guests when we return. So keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos. So we were just talking about this movie I saw with my kids called The Beekeeper. And I got a clip of that movie, of the trailer, that I want you to hear. Check this out.
You're telling me one man did this. The only thing you know is he's a beekeeper.
A beekeeper? Well, that's not good.
Beekeepers is a special program outside the chain of command.
I protect the hive. When the system is out of balance, I correct it.
We have laws for these things.
Until they fail, then you have me.
So this guy is, what Americans are dreaming of, right? He is the guy that takes care of the deep state and the special interests when they get out of control, to protect the homeland, in effect, right? That's what he does in this movie. And it is just a really interesting, riveting thriller of a movie. I love a good Hollywood movie. It doesn't have to be realistic at all. The faker, the better. And Jason Statham, he can beat up 10 guys in 20 seconds. So it's very Hollywood. And I love that stuff. But I want to use that frame of reference, this little clip. And for those of you who've seen the movie, great. If not, you'll get some play-by-play, some color commentary as we do the conversation. But I want to bring in somebody that gets this from a unique perspective because he was a cop. He's a retired cop, retired sergeant from the Miami-Dade police. He was there 37 years he served. His name is Bert Gonzalez, but they call him Maverick. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Rich. How are you?
I'm wonderful, brother. Thank you. And I want to talk about your piece in Think American because I think it's a really interesting take. And this is a problem that I think some Americans know about, others don't. What made you write this piece?
Well, I started writing for Think American with Jessica, and the more I think about things, whether they're law enforcement related or a couple of political op-eds that I've done for her. While I was watching the movie, it just occurred to me that he, cleaning house, trying to get rid of the deep state, I said, this is a great movie, great concept. Let me see if I can apply it to our current state of politics. And it just clicked. So I just sat down and I started writing, and it kind of just poured out of me that the beekeeper, we need someone to put the country back in balance. So as I went along and I kept looking at it, and then of course I did my research, the beekeeper is a fictional concept. It doesn't really exist within the government, at least not that we know of, right?
Right.
But it made sense that someone or a group of someones has to rebalance the hive, and the hive is America. And because we've gotten so out of balance that now the individual has to fight back. But in my mind, just taking, from the movie, the one person fighting the fight, I look at it as Trump being the head beekeeper, and all of us, the 77 million that elected him into office, we are also the beekeeper and the queen slayer, the bee in the hive that kills the queen when she's not producing bees for the betterment of the hive. And I think that's where we've come to. And it just kind of made sense to me, and I was having some fun with it. And I just went along looking at, like you had mentioned a few minutes ago, the deep state. And the deep state has been trying to turn us away from what we are, a constitutional republic,
right,
into that democratic socialist stuff that we always hear and that people say that they are. And being here in Miami, it's really close to home because we have so many people that have been displaced from their countries when this has happened to them, including my wife and her family having to leave Cuba, having everything taken away from them. Because, as I call it, the bait and switch, when they come in and they go, we're going to do this for you, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that, and then boom, it's either full-blown communism or it's a dictatorship. And most recently in our hemisphere, Venezuela. And I know you can see that, and a lot of your listeners can see that. Venezuela was the richest country in South America. And look what happened. Now they're one of the poorest. So it kind of just made sense to me that this is where we're at, and the Statham character just resonated with me. Like you, I love movies. I love a good action movie, and the more, I guess, the more violent it is, the better I like it, because to me it's just fantasy. I'm not really looking at the real things happening in life. I've seen that.
Right.
And I don't watch reality cop shows. I don't need to see the real stuff. I lived it.
Right.
But
You've been
Hollywood
there and
yeah. And I like an escape, like you do. I like an escape.
Who doesn't?
Sit there for an hour and a half or 2 hours and just lose myself in the movie or the TV show.
Well, Bert Gonzalez, Maverick Sarge, I want to thank you for joining us, brother, and giving us some of that insight. I'd love to have you back in the future. Check out his book, The Real Greatest Show on Earth. You can get it on Amazon. And we're going to come back, your thoughts, calls, and reactions, and so much more when we return. Yeah, that's it, right? 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I'll be right back.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We're going to the phones for your reaction to a few things, but I want to add something to the mix. Two things, really. But the first thing I'm going to add is a back and forth, a question and answer session regarding the Supreme Court case today. CNN's Pam Brown had a back and forth with Stephen Miller at the White House. Listen to this.
Do you think a judge should just rubber stamp what your White House does? If not, what checks and balances do you think should be in place for this White House?
It's not the job of a district court judge to perform an individual green light or red light on every single policy that the president takes as the head of the executive branch. Just think about the premise baked into your question, respectfully, Pam. You're saying that when the American people elect a president of the United States of America,
I'm not saying
well, it's the implication, who is the sole head of the executive branch. Well, let me finish. I will answer the question happily. But look, when you have these kinds of lazy assumptions built into questions, it makes it hard to have a constructive dialogue.
What is a lazy assumption? I said you all had to win.
You said no. You said is it my expectation?
I'm speaking because now you're putting.
You said is it my expectation? It's not just you. It's the whole media. In other words, when you hear a sentence like
it is a completely fair question. You say judges rule against the White House.
And I will gladly answer it. When you say, do we think district court judges should rubber stamp each action? There is a premise that is built into that is absurd. The president is the sole head of the executive branch. He's the only officer in the entire government that's elected by the entire American people. Democracy cannot function. In fact, democracy does not exist at all if each action the president takes, foreign policy, diplomatic, military, national security, has to be individually approved by 700 district court judges. That's democracy. So if there's 15 communist crazy judges on the court, that each of them as a team working together can block and freeze each and every executive action.
Outstanding performance here. He's right. And again, this is back to what we were talking about before. There are so many people involved in deep state shenanigans that don't even know that they're deep state shenanigans, right? I'm going to take that first sentence there, and we're going to get to your calls, I promise. I want to know what you think about this. But this is fascinating to me, right? She says, should they rubber stamp everything? And he calls around and saying, look, respectfully, Pam, you're saying that when the American people elect a president of the, and then she cuts him off. And this is fascinating to me. Again, I probably should not be fascinated by the left within the media and the deep state. But I think that it's almost as if they aren't aware. They aren't aware that they're leading in the question, that their question has an automatic presumption built into it, and that you're not having a fair conversation. And I love it that he calls her out on it, because we see way too much of this. And this is the reason for people to think I'm patient and I let the people that disagree with me go on and on. It's not that I'm patient. It's that I'm allowing everyone listening to hear their baked-in biases. You can have a bias if you want. That's fine. I have mine. But when you're trying to make a certain assumption as part of a matter of fact, that isn't a matter of fact. The Supreme Court isn't rubber stamping anything. And I would make the argument, I would turn around and say, should I expect the Supreme Court to rubber stamp free speech? Should I expect the Supreme Court to rubber stamp thou shalt not kill? Right? And make some extreme examples to make the point that you're supposed to rubber stamp things that are right. That's your job as the court, is to interpret things that are accurate and lawful. So anyway, very, very good exchange. And he called her out very, very well. I want to know what you guys think of this and everything else that we've been talking about tonight. Let's go to Eduardo, Tampa, Florida. Streaming the show, richvaldez.com. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Rich. Well, before I get on to my other comment, but just on what you were talking about, I think the reporter should have asked, well, why isn't the Democrats working with the Republicans in Congress to get a law out there so the president can sign on it? So there's not these executive actions, and then the Supreme Court needs to weigh on it. Why isn't she talking about that? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, good point. By the way, Eduardo, I'm not sure if you listened to the show last night, but we took your advice from when you called in talking about Chuy Garcia, the congressman from Chicago.
I heard that. Yeah, you were talking to Ray Lopez.
Yeah, what'd you think of that?
Well, very good. Yeah, I mean, I heard him on local radio shows like Bruce Dumont on Sundays and Chicago shows in the morning. Yeah, I wish he would run for mayor.
Do you think he was telling the truth?
Mayor.
It sounded sincere to me, and like he knows what's going on.
Yeah, he's very intelligent. He knows a lot what's going on, and the shenanigans happening in Chicago. So I really wish that I'm really glad there's somebody there that you guys are interviewing him on national shows. So we got all that stuff coming out from Chicago, and it's going on the national stage. Because even WABC was weighing in on Mr. Johnson too.
Yeah,
he was calling Memorial Day Africa Day. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't. I did not know that.
He did,
but
yeah.
I think he's a clown, Mr. Johnson, Mayor Johnson. I think he's out of control. And of course, we love WABC, my old stomping grounds. I started my radio career at WABC.
Yeah.
Anyway,
hey, Rich, before you go,
yeah.
did you catch the Scripps spelling bee?
I did not. I didn't even know we had that yet.
Yeah, that shows you how DEI fails because you have all these immigrants from mostly India who kick everybody's ass on that contest.
Right. It shows you how merit works, right? Merit and that work ethic that goes with so many South Asian households. Yeah, listen, it's not a joke. I know. My daughter had a friend from Korea, and she was saying how strict her parents were when it came to the area of education. So some customs are good ones, in my opinion. I think it's good to have that. And we interviewed, I was telling Count Delacula off the air a little earlier, some years ago when we were talking about Thomas Jefferson School in Virginia, that there was a kid from South Asian. His mom was Asra Nomani, and she came on the show, and she was saying her kid had done phenomenally well, and he lost his scholarship because of DEI. He's brown, he's Indian, but he wasn't brown enough because he was Indian. He needed to be Hispanic or black in order to get the scholarship. And it was not specifically a black or Hispanic scholarship, but that's what the school was doing. And it was really unfair. This kid had earned that scholarship, and they turned it around and took it from him just because he wasn't the race they wanted him to be. And you got to say, man, that's not cool. You know, I mean, you're literally ruining a kid's future. There was a $100,000 scholarship or something like that. So anyway, very interesting point you bring up there. Eduardo, thank you for the call. Tampa, Florida, in the building. Streaming the show, richvaldez.com. I appreciate it. Let me see. Where do I want to go? We're going to go to my man, Ken, Lansing, Michigan. WILS. Go right ahead.
Good evening, my brother in truth. There was what I want to roll off of what you were saying in the last hour about how the Hispanics voted 69% for Donald Trump, which is absolutely amazing, the turnaround that he's got with the Hispanic population. But they, being God-loving people and people that want their jobs to continue without other people coming into this country and taking their damn jobs because they'll do it for $1 an hour less. There's a county on the Mexico-Texas border, Rich, that is literally on the border. Well, since 1895, it has voted every single election Democrat, and it's the largest Hispanic population in any county in the United States until last fall. They voted for El Presidente Trump.
Yeah. I remember when they did that. That was a big deal. It's in the Rio Grande Valley, and the same thing, right? I mean, Henry Cuellar was a Democrat from the border region, was constantly criticized by his colleagues because he was doing what his constituents wanted him to do, which was to handle the problem with the cartels, right? And it's funny how they water things down. Right, they water things down. They make it seem like it's something that it's not. Where you're talking about cartels and fentanyl and drugs being moved across the border, yet they'll say, "Oh, it's an immigration issue." New Americans pursuing the American dream, and it's totally unfair the way it's mischaracterized. But this is what the media does. They are part and parcel of the problem, lamentably. Ken.
And, Rich, them people are right there living what's going on in reality, not some damn news people who don't know what's going on. So they voted with what's going on in their lives.
Yep, it's the real deal. Ken, I want to thank you for your call, my brother. And I'm going to take a pause right here. Shout out to WILS. Coming right back. We're going to take some more calls from the middle of the country. 833-482-5337. I want to know, where's my people from Oregon? Where are my people from California? Where are my people from New York at? It's Friday. It doesn't mean you get the night off. I'm not off. You're not off. Let's go. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, let's go to the phones. We go Open Phone America, a time-honored tradition on this program, pioneered by Larry King 47 years ago, 1978, continued by the legend himself, Jim Bohannon, for 3 decades, and now you and me get to be part of that history, that legacy. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. I want to go to Tim. He's calling us from Marion, Illinois, WGGH. Tim, what's on your mind, brother?
Yeah, I was walking down the Ocean Beach here in southern Illinois.
Yes.
And I saw these shells on the beach that said 69 AOC.
They just magically appeared that way, right? Because that's what they do to seashells at the beach.
They did. Yeah. And I'm thinking...
Did your wife tell you? You should take a picture of that and put it on Instagram.
It's like seeing a beautiful steak. Beautiful person, but the inside's full of maggots.
Oh, jeez. I tell you, that's AOC, all out crazy. My least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You know, some years ago, I always, whenever I have a chance, I tell this story because we're on the verge. We're about a week away from the 6th or 7th anniversary of that. But I bumped into her. I saw her at the Puerto Rican parade. She was walking down Fifth Avenue. I was about to walk down with a different group. And I went over. The parade stopped for a second, so I walked over to talk to her. So I had contacted her office. My producers had contacted her office to invite her on the show because she was saying how great socialism was. And I wanted to have a discussion about capitalism and socialism and invite her on the show to have that conversation. And you know what, Tim? She gave me a very nasty look and literally jogged across the street. She ran away. And most people wouldn't believe that if I said that story. But I turned around and there were cameras taking picture of all this. The whole thing's on video. It's on YouTube. AOC runs away from Rich Valdez. Matter of fact, if you Google it, you'll see the New York Post and Newsweek and a bunch of big outlets covered this story. Because at the time, somebody told somebody in the press, it wasn't me, that I was considering a run for Congress and taking her out. I was not. I was challenging her on the merits of her argument. But either way, it was just a very funny thing, and it turned into such a big thing. Then her PR person, her communications director, yells at me, tells me to go F myself. He ends up getting fired, not because of that, but for similar shenanigans. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But, Tim, I'm glad you found those seashells. I know you would not have arranged them that way because apparently, according to former FBI Director Comey, seashells come arranged that way already. So that was good to know. Thank you, brother, for the call. I appreciate it. Again, I'm looking for my callers in California. I'm looking for my callers in New York. Shout out to Marion, Illinois, WGGH. Let's go. Let's see. Where do we go here? Let's go to Rich, Redwood City, California, KSFO. What's on your mind?
Hey, I'm so disgusted with this guy Musk. the guy seems like a proto-fascist. This guy reminds me of this woman who went down to Germany during the Nazi regime period. She visited Hitler, and then when it looked like war was going to happen in 1939, he told her she's got to go back to England, and she was so upset about it, she put a bullet in her brain.
Now,
And
who
then
is
when she
Elon
got
Musk
back-
visiting that he reminds you of this woman, Unity Mitford?
The guy's a proto-fascist. He's an American. He's betraying the American
Sir,
public. He should
who
be
is he
arrested,
visiting?
as far as I'm concerned.
How is he
It
betraying the
doesn't
American
matter what
public?
He reminds me of that stupid woman who
But
went
how?
down there and put
Make
a bullet
your point.
in her brain.
You
He might as well put a
you
bullet
said
in
that
his
she
brain.
put a
The
bullet
guy's
in
a
her
waste of
head
time. He's
3
insulting
times.
the American public.
Sir, yelling isn't going to get you anywhere. Nobody thinks you're that much smarter or that you're a better debater because you can't answer. I'm asking very simple questions. Now, I could scale back a little and say, all right, let's start with your name, right? But I know your name already. Your name is Rich. That's pretty easy, right? R-I-C-H. Now, you said he is a proto-fascist. She put a bullet in her brain. All right, you said that 10 times. What I want to know is, how is Elon Musk betraying the American people?
He's doing a lousy job of supposedly saving money. How come he doesn't understand?
How
that
is
we
doing a
need to
lousy
have-
job?
We need.
Sir,
intercept
stop
the
talking. I'm
missile.
asking questions. How is doing a lousy job a betrayal of the American people?
Let me give you the example.
Hurry up.
We are wasting money on military bases we don't need, and we need interceptor missiles.
What
we're
does
short on, and
military
he hasn't done
bases
anything
have to
about
do
it.
with Elon Musk?
He
Stop
looked-
yelling.
he looked he's
You
trying
sound
to-
like a savage.
I just
Listen to
told
me,
you,
you
idiot.
California liberal moron. Listen to me. How does having unnecessary military bases have anything to do with Elon Musk?
Betraying America.
How?
I just told you the guy failed
Sir,
to understand.
I'm
that we
happy
need
to have a
interceptor missiles.
conversation, but you're shouting. You sound like you probably haven't gotten laid in about a year. You need to blow some steam off. You've got to take it easy. Maybe have a drink or something. You're not making any sense. This isn't coherent. Anyway, I appreciate your call, sir, but you got to do a better job when you come. You got to, if you're going to come correct. Rich in Redwood City, KSFO. Thank you, sir. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. With a minute to go on the clock, we go back to San Francisco. Let's check in with Tommy. Tommy, you want to fight too? KSFO.
Hello, yeah, hi. Hey, first off, I'll apologize on behalf of that. I think you called it pretty correctly, that moron that you had to talk to from Redwood City.
Yeah. One of your neighbors.
I grew up not too far from there.
Oh, wow.
So,
I don't
anyway.
want to cut you off, but we're going to run out of time. What's on your mind, brother?
Well, I just wanted to tell you about us people that are sane out here in California. We're waiting for some energy to come out here to kind of do a little China and the bull shop disruption.
All right. Well, you know what? I love that. I got to pause here because the music's coming in. But, Tommy, make sure you make it your business to call in as often as you can. Maybe you're going to be the captain of that squad of bringing the truth and bringing the common sense and being the bull in the China shop in your neck of the woods in San Francisco. Tommy, thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate your kind words. Shout out to KSFO. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.